What's good, everyone? Welcome to the Rabbit Stick YouTube channel. Today, I go over second-year quarterbacks who I think is going to boom, who's going to bust in 2022. It's going to be a good one. Strap yourselves in. Let's get into this. So the first thing I want to say about this is that, when it comes to quarterbacks, I don't like to judge guys based on their production as a rookie. There's just so many factors going into it. Usually if you're drafted high, you're going to a bad team. College and pro, two completely different speeds. You're learning new teammates. You're playing against guys that have been there for years. Just as a rookie quarterback, there's a lot stacked against you. So I really don't like judging quarterbacks or, how good they're going to be as pros based on their first year production. So year two is really where I think the evaluation really starts there. This is a great quarterback class. We have 6, possibly 7 quarterbacks that I think can be starters in this league. But just as it goes every single draft class, there's going to be guys that excel and take that next step and become stars or just solid starters. And there's going to be guys that just fall by the wayside that can't handle the pro game, can't handle the speed, can't handle the processing needed to succeed. It's not going to be easy, okay? And these things are never for sure. No one's perfect at predicting who's going to be a star, who's not going to be a star. Nobody's 100% perfect on that. But I wanted to make this video today to kind of go over my thoughts, who I think has better chances of becoming stars and taking that next step. Because usually around year 2, we start seeing guys take that next step and really establish themselves as some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. We've seen it with guys like Lamar Jackson, Carson Wentz, even though Carson Wentz isn't very good anymore. We've seen it from Patrick Mahomes. There's a ton of guys where in their second year, they really took off. And with the kind of talent that we had in last year's quarterback draft class, chances are somebody is going to have a breakout season. So I wanted to make this video today to talk about everybody, talk about how they did in their rookie season, talk about their team situation coming into 2022, and just my general thoughts on this awesome quarterback draft class. Okay, let's start with the number 1 overall pick from last year, Trevor Lawrence. What can I say about Trevor Lawrence? He's like the perfect physical prospect. He's big. He can run. He's got a massive arm. Great leader. Very, has a high level of poise. It's hard to say that this guy isn't going to work out as an NFL quarterback. If you just watch the Colts game, that famous Colts game where they completely bungled the end of the season, you look at Trevor Lawrence and, he was playing against a very good defense there, Darius Leonard, Kenny Moore, DeForest Buckner, that was a very good defense last year. And he ripped them to pieces with a roster that was not very good, an interim head coach, it was very, very impressive. So going into year 2, he's got Doug Peterson, who likes to run a lot of RPOs, and that's right up Trevor Lawrence's alley. He's one of the best RPO throwers I've ever seen coming out of college. They ran a lot of them at Clemson. And, that's definitely going to be something that Doug Peterson is bringing to the table that Trevor Lawrence is going to be able to excel at. Jacksonville definitely made a lot of aggressive moves in free agency to go get Lawrence as much help as possible. So that's good. I think they overpaid for a couple of guys, but that's neither here nor there. But, I don't expect Jacksonville to win a lot of games this year because I still don't think that their roster can really compete with all the really, really talented teams that are in the AFC right now. But, I think that Trevor Lawrence is going to have a good year. I think he's going to establish himself as the surefire franchise quarterback of that franchise this year, and I think he's going to have a solid year. He's going to show what can be. He's not going to have that breakout superstar MVP level season, in my opinion, because I just don't think his team is going to be able to win that much. But, I think this is going to be a good stepping stone year for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they desperately need that. They've had a lot of terrible seasons in a row, ever since they lost to the Patriots in the AFC Championship a couple years back. It's just been one nightmare season after another. And, they just need a year where, they establish a culture where, they set things in place for the future. And I think that they're going to do that this year. I can see them winning anywhere between like 4 and 7 games, somewhere in that range. And, definitely not a playoff team. But, I'm looking at Trevor Lawrence, and I think going into 2 seasons from now, next off season, we're going to be looking at him. We're going to say, okay, this guy is ready to lead this team to the playoffs in 2023 and beyond. So overall, really like Trevor Lawrence. I think he's going to be a very good player in this league. I will point out that I said that he was going to struggle his rookie season in Jacksonville. I was one of the only people out there that was talking about his flaws coming out of college. Most people just said, oh, he's like the best quarterback prospect we've ever seen since Andrew Luck. And it's like, all right, let's pump the brakes. This kid, he's a good player. He's got fantastic physical attributes. He's a great kid. But, he had some holes coming into the league, and those showed last year. He didn't have a very good year. But with that being said, I've said from the very beginning, I think he's going to be a very solid NFL starter. Based on what he showed us last year, it looks like that's going to be the case. I guess we'll just have to see what he does coming up here in 2022. Okay, we got Zach Wilson, New York Jets, number 2 overall pick from last season. All signs are pointing to a breakout year for Zach Wilson. Okay. I was a little bit more skeptical of Zach Wilson coming into the league last year. If you look at the highlight film of Zach Wilson in college, it's easy to fall in love with him. He's got incredible arm talent, like top 10, maybe top 5 in the entire world kind of arm talent. And you just don't see that very often. It's very exciting and very fun to watch. But man, he was very reckless with the football at BYU. He would throw, he would make some very, very questionable decisions. And, it was kind of weird because my comp for him coming into the draft last year was Sam Darnold, the guy that the Jets replaced. And the reason why I said that is because both of those guys have incredible arm talent, and they make questionable decisions. It's just the way it is. And, Zach Wilson came into the league last year, and, his lack of ability to process information was very evident from the start. Before he got injured, it looked like, when I watched his film from last season, it just looked like he didn't really know what to do. He didn't really have a plan. Once there was pressure in his face, he just completely panicked, and he just nothing good happened. Mike LaFleur, their first-time offensive coordinator last year, really didn't like the way he called games last year. He really didn't help Zach much out last season. Obviously, the offensive line wasn't great. The receivers, a bunch of people got hurt. Elijah Moore was hurt. Corey Davis was hurt. There's just it was a revolving door at receiver. And, it just wasn't a great situation for Zach Wilson last season. But he came back after that injury, and he finished the season pretty darn good. Those last couple games when he comes back from injury are the best games he had all year. He looked way more comfortable in the pocket. He looked a lot more comfortable under pressure. He was making some very impressive throws. He showed some very good things at the end of 2021 last season. And, going into this year, the Jets had a fantastic draft. They brought in Garrett Wilson to add to Elijah Moore and Corey Davis. And I like Braxton Berrios too. The offensive line, it's not, I think it's actually okay. They had a lot of injuries last season, but Mekhi Becton, I'm still a believer in him. Elijah Very Tucker is obviously great. They still have some other good pieces on that offensive line, in my opinion. And Mike LaFleur, that's still probably the biggest question mark for me. Will he be able to, mature a little bit in his offensive play calling? I don't know. We'll see. I like the offensive structure. It's, a modernized West Coast offense that we're seeing in San Francisco and LA. Very similar offense, very similar scheme. It's just, I wonder about Mike LaFleur's maturity as a play caller. We'll see in that regard. But Zach Wilson, he's got the arm talent. He showed improvement with his mental processing at the end of last season. He's had a whole offseason now to work with his guys. I think going into 2022 with this much improved Jets roster, he has a chance to really make some noise. If he's the type of guy like a Mahomes or a Lamar Jackson that can take that next step into superstardom in 2022, this team is talented enough to compete in a very, very competitive AFC East. I know that they've got Buffalo. I know that they have New England. I know that they have Miami, who could all be good teams this season, but I look at the just sheer talent of this New York Jets roster, and if Zach Wilson can, live up to the hype, live up to that incredible arm talent, that incredible playmaking ability that he has, Jets are going to be great this season. So Zach Wilson, if there was anybody in this, if I'd have to bet right now on one guy from this draft class to win next season's MVP, I would bet on Zach Wilson. And, that's kind of crazy for me to say, because when he got drafted last year, I was saying that he was the most likely to bust just because of the organizational woes of the New York Jets. But I really think Joe Douglas has done a good job building this roster, putting them in a position to succeed in the future. And, I think if Zach Wilson is the real deal, he'll have a shot to be most improved player, and possibly MVP. So I guess we'll have to see in that regard. But, I'm very optimistic about Zach Wilson. Okay, next we have Trey Lance, San Francisco. And Lance has the most pressure on any of these quarterbacks, man. San Francisco is in win now mode. They drafted a lot to go get Trey Lance. And, at this point, to me, it's a coin flip. Because on the one hand, Shanahan is a QB guru. Like, he turned Matt Schaub into a Pro Bowler. Okay, like, he's taking guys that just, like, they're just, with anybody else, they're a bad quarterback, a below average, maybe starting quarterback, and turn them into Pro Bowlers. Matt Ryan. When Shanahan was in Atlanta, he was an MVP caliber quarterback. And it's like, Matt Ryan's a good quarterback, but he's only been an MVP caliber kind of guy with Shanahan. So Shanahan's the type of guy that elevates quarterback talent. Trey Lance is a massive physical talent, okay? Big arm, big body. He can run for sure. But, when I look at his tape from last season and the games that he played, he wasn't as dynamic of a runner as, I think a lot of people expected him to be. The mental processing wasn't at a level that I would expect from a pro starter. Just the lack of playing time over the last couple seasons was very evident to me. And he's still very raw. He was still very raw last season. And it's just, going into this season now, it's a very tall order here for Trey Lance to make that much progress, the kind of progress he needs to make if this is going to be a Super Bowl caliber team. Do I expect Jimmy Garoppolo to be on the roster next season? No. I think Trey Lance is going to get his shot. I don't think that they want the locker room issue of having Jimmy G in the locker room splitting the guys there. But so I think one way or another, Jimmy G will be gone. But Trey Lance, massive talent, could absolutely be, that second year jump kind of guy. He could be like next season's MVP even. If he's no doubt big arm, he can run, but it's like, it's just, it's not as likely as I would say Zach Wilson at this point. Reports are saying that the San Francisco coaching staff has been underwhelmed by Trey Lance, and this is what worried me with Trey Lance as a prospect coming out last year. He was my number 5 ranked quarterback in this draft class last season, and the reason why is because his mechanics and his mental processing is just not up to snuff. He has this really herky-jerky throwing motion where, he'll dip and then he'll come up out of it when he throws, and it affects his accuracy. He's not as pinpoint as you need to be as an NFL quarterback. And then the mental processing, like he would miss there's guys right in front of his face that are wide open, and he just skips over that read. It's like, it was super frustrating to watch. It's not like he's a terrible decision maker. It's just, sometimes he just doesn't have that, he just doesn't have what he needs as a processor. With a guy like Shanahan guiding him, he could absolutely get there. Part of the reasons why I actually liked the San Francisco 49ers picking Lance over Mac Jones is because, Shanahan, if anyone's going to get the most out of a guy like Trey Lance, big arm, big body, big time talent, it's going to be Shanahan. So that's why I liked the Lance pick over a guy like Mac Jones. But, if they would have drafted Justin Fields, okay, I think that we're talking about, I think we're talking about a Super Bowl caliber team, because I think Justin Fields is that kind of caliber player, but we'll get to him. But as for Trey Lance, he needs to fix his mechanics. In order to get more accurate, he's going to have to make big steps in the mental processing category, especially because now, based on the 2021 film, he wasn't a very dynamic runner, not on the same level as a Justin Fields, for example. He did not show that it factor as a runner last season. So he's really going to have to make it, I think, as a pocket passer that can escape when needed. But, he hasn't really shown the ability to do that at an efficient level yet. So, if he turns out to be the real deal, San Francisco's a Super Bowl contender next season, in my opinion, especially in a weak NFC. But, at this point, it's kind of a coin flip for me whether or not he actually pans out. Let's get to my number one quarterback from last year's draft class, Justin Fields. He was my favorite. Very controversial putting him over Trevor Lawrence. But, I love Justin Fields' skill set. I love his mentality. I love his leadership. Unfortunately, he just went to the worst possible situation in Chicago. Matt Nagy and that coaching staff completely inept to handle him in his development last season. Going into this season now, they have a new regime, Matt Eberflus, new GM, and they completely deconstructed this roster. I've never seen this before. You got a second year potential superstar quarterback on your roster, and you completely just abandon ship and start over. You just don't see that very often, especially when you're in the most important years of Justin Fields' development, years 2 and 3. It looks like that they're not going to have a good roster. That's just the way it is. They didn't have a very good draft, in my opinion. And that goes on top of a very, very poor roster right now. In terms of weapons, Darnell Mooney is a number 2 receiver, in my opinion. I think they have a fantastic franchise quarterback on their roster right now, and they're completely wasting the opportunity. Even in a weak NFC, even in a conference that's just not very good, this is one of the worst rosters in the entire NFL. And if Justin Fields can get this team to 9-8, that will be an amazing feat, in my opinion. But, I feel like this team is going to maybe win 4 or 5 games in year 1 here. And people are going to be telling me that I was wrong about Justin Fields, and that, he's a bust, and he's terrible. But it's one of the most important factors of QB success rate early on in career is where they go. And right now, Justin Fields is in a terrible situation. I could totally see Justin Fields, first couple years in the league, doesn't have fantastic production because he's just in a terrible situation in Chicago, and then he goes somewhere else and absolutely lights it up. I could totally see that happening. But I could also see Justin Fields just putting this team on his shoulders too. He's a massive talent. If this new offensive coordinator, by the way, the new offensive coordinator has never called plays before, but I think that if they use him in the right ways, QB run game, read options with David Montgomery, not a very good offensive line, but you have something there in Justin Fields. He's got a big arm. you're gonna have to. Yeah, it's gonna be an uphill battle here for Justin Fields, man. If he ends up staying in Chicago and really like flourishing in this terrible situation, man, I mean, he's gonna be an All-Pro someday. He's gonna be a future MVP. But just the fact of the matter is, not a lot of people can go into a situation like Chicago right now and come out, good. Just look at Sam Darnold, massive talent, had all the potential in the world, could still be a good quarterback, but the Jets completely wasted those first couple of years of his development, and now most people don't see him as a starter, like a true starter. So could the same thing happen to Justin Fields? Maybe, but also at the same time, like if he goes like 8-9, if he can get this team to close to 500, he's their guy. Okay. Now, if we're starting to get into the 1 or 2 win range here, maybe you start wondering about Justin Fields. But, I expect this team to be anywhere between 4 and 6 wins. I don't expect a lot from this team. I expect some big time highlights like we saw from last year with Justin Fields. But, I definitely don't see MVP. I definitely don't see All-Pro this season. I just don't think he has enough help. Maybe he'll be like a guy like Josh Allen, where in year 3 he turns it on with a better roster. If Chicago does a good job at building this roster here over the next couple months or next couple of years, but it's not a good situation for Justin Fields right now. And I really believe in him. I really believe in Justin Fields, the person. The only question is he going to be able to overcome all the systemic crap that's going on in Chicago right now? All right, we got Mac Jones. He arguably had the best season out of any of these guys last season. And plain simply is because he was on the best team with the best coaching. Josh McDaniels was his offensive coordinator. Bill Belichick was running the defense. The defense was obviously great. Mac Jones could do what Mac Jones does, which is manage the game. We saw last year that, in inclement conditions, Mac Jones is not, he can't be trusted. I think there was a game where he passed it like 2 times or something like that in the super windy game against Buffalo. But, I look at Mac Jones and I just, I see someone that's okay, but he's not anything special. I see Alex Smith, good pro. If you have a good defense and a good roster and good coaching, you can win with Mac Jones. But when you get, especially New England, in that division, with New York and Buffalo, he's going to have to play in inclement conditions, and he's going to have to play well. In the playoffs, it's, playing in Foxborough in the playoffs, it's going to be cold, it's going to be windy, and Mac Jones doesn't have a great arm. He doesn't have an arm that can really cut through that wind, cut through the elements. And because of that, I'm not sure if he's the kind of guy that can really win a Super Bowl in New England. And now that Josh McDaniels is out, New England lost a couple big pieces on defense. J.C. Jackson, probably the biggest out of all of them. I'm just not sure. So, I think he's going to be solid. He'll be fine. But right now, the AFC is loaded. If the Jets turn out to be good, if Miami turns out to be good, just no Bill Belichick team will ever be terrible. Okay, let's just get that out of the way. The defense will be fine next season. They'll win games, especially against teams with young quarterbacks. But do I see them as a playoff team? Probably not. If they do, they're probably a low wild card kind of seed. But I'm not a big believer in Mac Jones. I think that they're going to take a big step down this season. And I think, when it's all said and done, Mac Jones is not going to be seen as the best quarterback in this draft class. He was the best rookie in this draft class, but with all the big talents in this year's draft class, in this draft class in particular, I don't see Mac Jones ending up as the guy in this class. So I guess that's where I'll leave it there with Mac Jones. All right, we got the 3rd round pick here, Davis Mills. So, he earned his opportunity to be the Houston Texans starter this year with the way he played last season at the end. They beat the Chargers, almost a playoff team, and what Davis Mills was able to do with a terrible offensive line with very limited wide receiver help, it was really, really impressive. I'll say that. And David Culley not not a very good head coach. Okay, so Davis Mills overcame a lot in his rookie season to earn the spot that he's in now. Lovie Smith, not sold on him as the future of the Houston Texans. Brandon Cooks is still pretty good. I didn't see a ton of improvement in this roster. John Mechie is kind of slow, and he was kind of like their big addition to that wide receiver room. He'll be okay, I suppose. He'll be a starter for them, but definitely not the best guy that they could have got at that time of the draft, in my opinion. But Davis Mills showed some very good things last season. He could, and he's got all the tools, man. He's got a big arm. He's a big body, moves well in the pocket. He showed last year that he can process information pretty darn well. And, now he has a full off season. So, kind of like the Justin Fields situation here, I don't expect Davis Mills to win a ton of games in 2022. This is still arguably the worst roster in the entire AFC right now. And Davis Mills, unless he has like a MVP type season, this team is not going to be competitive, in my opinion. I guess we'll see. I mean, they added Derek Stingley, awesome pick in my opinion, but and they had a pretty darn good draft in my opinion, but they're bringing in a lot of new guys, including a new head coach, and it's just, I don't know. I just don't see the Texans as a very successful team next season. And if they're in position to take another quarterback next season, like a Bryce Young or a CJ Stroud, my assumption is if Davis Mills doesn't, ascend and really play well this year, and if they're a 4 or 5 win team this year, 3-win team even, Davis Mills probably didn't play to a level to retain his job. So I do like Davis Mills. I'm rooting for him. I think he's a good guy. I think he's a hard worker, and I'm definitely rooting for him. But I definitely say the odds are not in his favor right now, and he has a lot to overcome. He had to overcome a lot last year, and he overcame that. So good for him. But it's going to be a similar battle this year, and he's really going to have to show his worth. And I think he's going to have to get up to at least 5, 6, maybe 7 wins if he wants to retain this job, and I'm just not sure that he's going to be able to do that. Okay, I just want to touch on somebody that that doesn't get mixed into this conversation very much. Kellen Mond for the Minnesota Vikings. He has been lighting it up in OTAs from what I've been hearing. Mike Zimmer isn't the type of guy that likes rookies, particularly rookie quarterbacks. Reports say that he didn't want Mond. It was Spielman that wanted Mond, and Spielman made an executive decision to take him, and Zimmer just never really liked Kellen for whatever reason. Probably because he's Mike Zimmer. He doesn't like rookie quarterbacks, but neither here nor there. They have a new coaching staff, new front office, and they really like Kellen. Okay, right now Kirk Cousins is the quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, but if you're looking at the Vikings and they have another disappointing year this year, if Kirk Cousins isn't getting this, in my opinion, a well-built roster into playoff contention, with the NFC being as weak as it's been in years at this point, I think it's time to pull the trigger on Kellen Mond at some point this season. Whenever it is that the Vikings are out of playoff contention, if that time comes, and I don't think it will, but if it does, Kellen Mond has to play, and he has to be able to show, what he's capable of. Because if Kirk Cousins isn't the guy after this year, you have to look for other options. And to me, Kellen Mond, he was my number 4 quarterback last year in the entire draft class. I had Trey Lance and Mac Jones behind him last year. And, I still stand by everything that I said about Kellen Mond last year. He's got a big arm. He's a great kid, hard worker. He's played in a pro-style system before. He's athletic. He can run too. Like he's a great quarterback prospect in my opinion. In my opinion, he would have been the number 1 guy in this year's draft class. In my opinion, he even higher than Malik Willis on my board. And everybody knows how much I love Malik Willis. So Kellen Mond, I think, was a first-round talent last year that the Vikings got in the 3rd round. And, I think he has the talent to be that guy for the Vikings in the future. Only time will tell if he'll get the chance this year. I don't think he will, because I think Kirk Cousins will be good enough to get this team in playoff contention, whether that be as a wild card or as division champs. I think that kind of depends on the Packers. But anyway, I think Kellen Mond, I think he has a future in this league. I think he's going to be a starter in this league someday, whether that be with the Vikings, whether that be with somebody else. When he gets his shot still is up in the air. But I just wanted to include him on this list because I'm still a believer in Kellen Mond. So, Vikings fans, I think we got 2 pretty darn good quarterbacks on this roster. I think we're in good hands. I don't think we're going to have to draft one anytime soon. But yeah, if the Vikings are ever in a position that they're out of playoff contention, Kellen Mond needs to get his shot. So I guess that's where I'll leave it. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Kellen. Okay, that's going to be it for me. I really like this draft class. I think there's about 7 guys that have the talent to really be longtime starters in this draft class. Some guys are in better positions to succeed. Some guys are in worse positions. Zach Wilson, to me, is the guy that really has a chance to be the breakout player this year. I think he's in the best situation to be that breakout player, but Trey Lance could also be that type of player. I guess we'll just have to see. But yeah, I just love the group of guys here. Lots of talent, lots of guys that I think could be potential All-Pros, potential MVPs. This is one of the most highly rated quarterback classes for a reason. And now that we're heading into year 2, I think that their evaluation as pros can really start to begin. And it'll just be interesting to see how these guys progress in year 2. So if you guys like the content here on Rabbit's Take, make sure to press that subscribe button. Make sure to like Rabbit's Take on Instagram and Twitter. Really appreciate all the love, guys. And I hope you guys like the new setup. It's going to be the setup for the summer here while I look for jobs, radio jobs elsewhere around the country. So, it's going to be a very exciting summer. We got the podcast coming out. The Rabbit's Take podcast launches on Thursday, May 2nd. June 2nd. That's the day that the NBA Finals gets going. So we'll be talking a lot about the Warriors and the Celtics. But anyway, guys, I really appreciate all the love. Make sure to make sure to subscribe. Really appreciate all the love, and I'll see you guys next time.